What if I told you that paying off your mortgage early could actually be one of the worst financial decisions you ever make? Yeah, you heard that right. The advice your parents swore by, the own your home free and clear gospel that has been drilled into your head for decades, might be quietly sabotaging your retirement. Welcome to the conversation nobody is having loudly enough. Because right now, somewhere in America, a hard-working 60-something is writing a massive check to their mortgage lender, feeling like a financial hero, while their retirement account sits starving in the corner. And on the flip side, someone else is smugly holding on to that mortgage debt, thinking their money is working harder elsewhere, while interest silently eats them alive. Both of them could be wrong. Both of them could be right. It all comes down to three numbers, and most people never bother to run them. So if you are within a decade of retirement and you still have a mortgage, buckle up, because what we are about to break down could either save your financial future or completely reframe everything you thought you knew about debt, wealth, and what it actually means to retire free. Before we dive in, let me ask you something. Are you about to make a six-figure financial mistake without even realizing it? Because thousands of homeowners heading into retirement do exactly that every single year, and they do it with a smile on their face thinking they are being responsible. Here is the uncomfortable reality. Paying off your mortgage early sounds noble, it sounds disciplined, and it sounds like the kind of thing your financially savvy neighbor brags about at dinner parties. But without running these three specific numbers first, you are essentially making one of the biggest financial decisions of your life completely blind. We are not talking about minor rounding errors here. We are talking about the difference between a retirement that works and one that quietly falls apart 5 years in. So if you are the kind of person who actually wants to retire with confidence rather than just hope, stay locked in. Because what we are about to break down is the exact calculation framework that separates the homeowners who thrive in retirement from the ones who end up asset-rich and cash-poor, wondering where it all went wrong. Here is the brutal truth that your bank never bothered to explain to you. That interest rate on your mortgage is either quietly working in your favor or it is absolutely destroying your wealth. And the difference between those two outcomes comes down to one simple comparison. If your mortgage rate is sitting below 5%, congratulations, you are borrowing some of the cheapest money you will ever see in your lifetime. But if that rate is hovering above 6 or 7% every single month, you are handing your lender a small fortune while your net worth barely moves. This is not about being scared of debt. This is about understanding whether your debt is a tool or a trap. Smart homeowners do not just make their payments and hope for the best. They know their number. They compare it against what their money could be earning elsewhere. And then they make a calculated, ruthless decision about where every extra dollar goes. So before we go any further, pull out that mortgage statement right now. Because what comes next only works if you actually know the rate you are fighting against. Here is the dirty little secret your mortgage lender never bothers to mention. The interest rate printed on your statement might not even be your real cost of borrowing. Mind-blowing, right? Welcome to the concept of after-tax cost of debt. And once you understand this, you will never look at your mortgage the same way again. If you are one of the homeowners who still itemizes deductions on your federal tax return, the Internal Revenue Service actually lets you deduct the mortgage interest you pay every single year, which means Uncle Sam is quietly subsidizing your home loan. Run the numbers, and it gets even juicier. A 6% mortgage rate combined with a 22% tax bracket does not actually cost you 6%. It costs you closer to 4.7% after taxes. That is over a full percentage point vanishing into thin air, just because you knew where to look. But here is where it gets ruthless. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act came along, nearly doubled the standard deduction, and suddenly, millions of homeowners lost that benefit overnight without even realizing it. If you are taking the standard deduction, and statistically, most of you are, your mortgage interest deduction is worth exactly zero, and your true borrowing cost is every painful bit of that stated rate. So before you make a single financial move, you need to know exactly which camp you are sitting in, because the math changes completely depending on your answer. Now let's talk about the second critical number you need to know, your expected investment return. This is where the decision gets really interesting. Think of it this way. Your mortgage interest rate is essentially the guaranteed return you get by paying off that debt. So the question becomes, could your money potentially work harder somewhere else? Historically, the United States stock market has delivered average annual returns of roughly 7 to 10% over long periods, depending on how you measure it. The Standard & Poor's 500 index, for example, has averaged approximately 10% annually before inflation over the past several decades. If your mortgage interest rate sits at 4% and your investments historically return 7%, the math suggests keeping that mortgage and investing, the difference could actually build more wealth over time. That spread between those two numbers is everything. Let's cut straight to the chase, because most people are quietly bleeding money by making this decision on autopilot, and the financial industry is absolutely not rushing to correct you. Here is the brutal truth. Paying off your mortgage early feels like winning. It feels responsible. It feels like something your grandparents would applaud. But feelings and optimal financial strategy are not always the same conversation. On one side of the ring, you have the psychological knockout punch of debt freedom, and on the other, you have the compounding wealth machine of long-term market investing. Both are legitimate contenders, and the answer is not as obvious as the self-proclaimed money gurus on social media would have you believe. Your interest rate, your tax situation, your investment timeline, and yes, your emotional relationship with risk, all of these variables are throwing punches simultaneously. So before you make another extra mortgage payment or redirect another dollar into your brokerage account, you need to understand exactly what is actually at stake, because the difference between the right and wrong choice here is not pocket change. It could be tens of thousands of dollars over the course of your financial lifetime. Here is the brutal truth that Wall Street does not want you sitting comfortably with. The overwhelming majority of Americans stumble into retirement completely blindsided by a number they never bothered to calculate, and that ignorance costs them everything. We are talking about people who worked 40 years, did everything society told them to do, and still ended up rationing prescriptions and skipping meals because nobody handed them this roadmap. But you, right now, watching this video, are already miles ahead of the crowd simply because you showed up. The retirement income gap is not some abstract financial theory cooked up in a university lecture hall. It is the cold, hard, monthly reality check that separates the retirees sipping coffee on their porch from the ones desperately scrolling job listings at 68 years old. So if you have ever typed, "Will I have enough money to retire?" into a search engine at 2 in the morning, congratulations, you found exactly what you were looking for, because we are about to break down the 3 critical numbers that will determine whether your retirement is a reward or a punishment. Let's walk through a simple example to make this concrete. Imagine your monthly expenses in retirement total $3,000. That includes your mortgage payment of $1,200, utilities, groceries, health care, and everyday living costs. Now, your guaranteed income sources, meaning Social Security and a small pension, bring in $2,000 per month. That leaves you with a $1,000 monthly gap that must come from your savings. Over a full year, that's $12,000 you're pulling from your nest egg. Now here's where it gets serious. If you eliminate that mortgage payment before retiring, your monthly expenses drop to $1,800. Suddenly, your gap shrinks to just $200 per month. That's a dramatic difference. The smaller your withdrawal rate, the longer your savings last, which could mean the difference between financial security and running out of money far too soon. Now that you have all three numbers, the real insight comes from seeing how they interact. Your mortgage interest rate tells you the guaranteed cost of carrying that debt. Your expected investment return tells you what your money could potentially earn instead. And your retirement income gap tells you how much financial pressure that mortgage payment adds to your monthly cash flow in retirement. These three numbers do not operate independently. They form a triangle of trade-offs that is completely unique to your situation. If your investment returns significantly exceed your mortgage rate, but your income gap is dangerously tight, the math alone cannot make the decision for you. Conversely, if your rate is high and your gap is already manageable, paying off the mortgage becomes far more compelling. The right answer lives at the intersection of all three numbers working together, not just one viewed in isolation. Now let's look at when eliminating your mortgage before retirement is genuinely the right call. Imagine someone who is 62 years old, carrying a mortgage at a 6.5% interest rate, with a retirement account that is fully funded and on track. Their Social Security and small pension will cover most expenses, but that monthly mortgage payment creates a tight income gap they cannot comfortably bridge. For this person, the numbers align beautifully in favor of paying it off. Their mortgage rate is high enough that no investment can reliably beat it on a guaranteed basis. Their savings are strong enough that redirecting some funds toward the payoff does not compromise their future. And eliminating that payment closes the income gap entirely, giving them true financial breathing room every single month throughout retirement. This profile is where payoff wins clearly. Now let's flip the script entirely and look at the opposite scenario, because for many people, keeping the mortgage and investing that extra money is actually the smarter financial move. Picture someone with a 30-year fixed mortgage locked in at 3%. Their retirement accounts are growing steadily, averaging 7 to 8% annually over time. On top of that, their Social Security benefits and pension income comfortably cover all monthly expenses, including that mortgage payment, without needing to touch their investments at all. For this person, paying off the mortgage early would mean pulling money out of investments that are outpacing their debt cost by nearly 5 percentage points. That gap represents real wealth being built every single year. When your income covers the payment, your rate is low, and your investments are outperforming your debt, the math strongly favors staying invested and letting that mortgage ride. Now that you understand how these three numbers work together, let us talk about where people go wrong. One of the biggest mistakes is making this decision purely on emotion. The feeling of being debt-free is powerful, and that is completely understandable. But acting on that feeling alone, without actually running your numbers, can cost you significantly in retirement. Another common mistake is oversimplifying the choice into a simple good debt versus bad debt conversation. This decision has layers, and treating it as black and white ignores critical details. Many people also completely overlook tax implications, like how paying off your mortgage might eliminate a deduction that was quietly helping you. And perhaps most dangerously, people ignore sequence of returns risk, meaning a market downturn in your early retirement years can devastate a portfolio if you have already drained it to pay off the house. The numbers must lead this decision. Now, what if neither extreme feels right for you? That is where the hybrid approach comes in, and honestly, it is the path many financially savvy homeowners choose. Instead of either ignoring the mortgage entirely or draining savings to eliminate it, they make extra principal payments each month. Even an additional $200 to $500 applied directly to principal can shorten a 30-year loan by several years. This strategy gives you something genuinely valuable on both sides. You get the psychological comfort of watching your balance shrink faster and knowing you are actively reducing debt. At the same time, you are not pulling large sums out of investment accounts that could continue growing. Your portfolio stays intact and working for you. The hybrid approach is not about compromise for its own sake. It is about intentionally balancing emotional peace of mind with mathematical discipline, which is exactly what smart retirement planning requires. Timing is everything when it comes to this decision, and the years immediately before retirement are arguably the most critical window of your entire financial life. Many people feel a strong emotional pull to enter retirement completely debt-free, and that instinct is understandable. But acting on that feeling without considering the consequences can seriously backfire. If you drain a significant portion of your savings or liquidate investments to make one large lump sum mortgage payoff right before retiring, you could enter this new chapter dangerously cash poor. That means if your car breaks down, a medical bill arrives, or the market drops sharply in your first year of retirement, you have very little cushion to absorb the shock. This is called sequence of returns risk, and it can permanently damage your long-term financial security. Protecting your liquidity during this transition period is just as important as eliminating debt. And if you happen to love the idea of cruising and exploring the open waters in your retirement years, then you are going to want to head over to our sister channel on YouTube called Lazy Dog Travels, where you will find wonderful content all about the cruising lifestyle, destination guides, and everything you need to know to make the most of your time on the water. It is the perfect companion channel for anyone who dreams of spending their retirement days sailing off into the sunset. Simply search for Lazy Dog Travels on YouTube and hit that subscribe button so you never miss an adventure.